Hi and welcome to Sun Moon Self. This video is a comparative analysis of two possible birth charts for Elvis Presley. One of them is the official one based on the purported birth time of 4:35 a.m. and the other one is a chart drawn up by a renowned New Age astrologer Dane Rudyar in the 1960s, who attempted to rectify Elvis's birth time for reasons that I don't actually know. But he attempted it and spoke with Elvis's father, as well as his spiritually inclined confidant Larry Geller, who was also Elvis's hairstylist and who influenced him a great deal in his pursuit of spiritual knowledge. The supposedly corrected chart by Rudyar came up with a Scorpio ascendant instead of the traditionally purported Sagittarius, and he came up with the birth time of 3:30 or 3:34 a.m. The difference of 4 minutes, however, doesn't make a dent in the chart, so I kept it at 3:34 and looked at whether or not this chart fits Elvis better. In order to do so, I have drawn on years of research about Elvis, whom I have found interesting for a long time, which doesn't mean that I'm attempting to put him on a pedestal, nor that I'm trying to be overly negative. I am trying to distance myself as much as possible and just look at the chart and what it tells me. And there is a lot to unpack. I'm going to make a separate video about his chart, the one that I believe is the correct one, because like I said, there is a lot there and it warrants a very dedicated approach. So feel free to read the pinned comment if you want to know where I'm coming from in my approach and why I believe that it's important to stay open also to the less flattering aspects of a person, but without giving in to the temptation of suspecting new avenues of darkness where there may not actually be a basis in truth. And also why I think it's so hard, if not impossible at times, to determine the truth. Because authors, journalists, celebrities, and all people lie, but the birth chart doesn't lie. I'm going by the easily researchable common denominators found in the statements by his closest friends, associates, and lovers. And this is a simple approach and also the fairest I can think of, because no one who has never met a person can make any trustworthy statement about that person, either for good or bad, and also because I appreciate the fact that not all of Elvis's former friends, etc., are singing his praise without addressing the less flattering traits. So therefore I try to get a perspective that is as well-rounded as possible and as unemotional as possible. But of course, everyone and their mother has an opinion, and especially a person like Elvis is many things to many people, and there will always be gray areas and things that we just simply can't find out. So this is where my astrological knowledge comes in, which operates under the aforementioned motto, people lie, but birth charts don't. Rudyar's chart has Scorpio on the ascendant at the anaretic degree of 29, which is the most intensely concentrated degree where the sign's full potential is expressed and emphasized. Contrary to the pop astrology view, the sun is not the most important factor. The ascendant sign's ruler is actually the ruler of the entire chart. So in this case, it's Mars, or Pluto according to modern astrology, but I prefer to see Mars as the traditional ruler and Pluto as the co-ruler. There isn't a huge difference between the two charts, Rudyar's and the official one, save for the crucial ascendant, of course, and a few important house placements, which I will get into. And I'm not going to focus on absolutely everything, as I'm going to make a dedicated video about Elvis's chart. With a Scorpio ascendant, Elvis would have seen the world through a scorpionic lens, meaning intensely sexual, passionate, open to darkness, and possibly also an obsessive personality with a great deal of insecurity. His chart ruler Mars is in the 11th house in Libra, trine Chiron and Gemini in the 7th house. It would have given him a few issues with relationships and making it hard for him to discern what he wanted on a rational level, which I think is not completely accurate, but it also is a possibly introverted nature in relationships, because Gemini is said to be extroverted and verbal, but with Chiron retrograde, there is an opposite tendency. What strikes me as extremely important is Jupiter in the 12th house. Jupiter tells of good karma and luck bestowed upon a person from their ancestors in the 12th house. But trine Pluto retrograde in Cancer, this would have given him an immensely sexual but subconscious power, making him sexually extremely complicated and, to be honest, possibly a bit obsessive. Elvis did have hang-ups in that area, no doubt about that. However, with Pluto, which is Scorpio's modern ruler, in the 8th house, trine Jupiter in the 12th, plus the Scorpio ascendant at the highly intense 29 degrees, gives me a much darker and less lighthearted person. Actually, I don't see any of Elvis's famous humor, goofiness, optimistic nature, and his capability to motivate others and make them feel like $1,000,000, something that he has been noted for by everyone who has ever had any prolonged contact with him. And yes, he could definitely be very morose and brooding, which is where his Sun, Mercury, and Venus come in, and also the Moon, etc. So there is absolutely a lot of capacity for darkness there, and the experience of loss with the Moon loosely conjunct out of sign with Saturn, both in the 3rd house, the house of siblings. That's very true because he lost his twin brother at birth. And also the huge mother issues, etc. So all of that is in this chart, but I don't see one bit of enthusiasm or lightheartedness. Neither do I see his famous humor. A lot of the 1st house, which is how you approach the world and how the world sees you, is in Sagittarius. However, the cusp of the house determines the ascendant and the main lens through which one sees the world, not the majority of a sign in the house. So therefore, and with Sagittarius ruler in the 12th house hidden away, despite the good ancestral karma, which I believe he did not have actually, it doesn't sit right with me. The reason is I see a morose, very brooding, somewhat sneaky, dark, sexually possibly obsessive, not too straightforward person with a tendency towards being very drawn to the dark side of things, and predominantly so. Elvis wasn't in the slightest opposed to questions about life and death, but this would have given him practically a deep obsession with death, completely minus the jovial character he was so well known for. He was actually both. He had the darkness and the capacity for so much joy and lightness. And in this chart, I do see that some things make sense, but it doesn't seem to grasp and represent Elvis as a whole, because it overly emphasizes the darkness, and as I said before, I don't see the light. I don't recognize the enthusiastic, positively spiritual, playful, somewhat impulsive, boyish, trickster type. And this was very much part of his personality. So many people, even his ex-wife, have noted that he was able to bring so much joy to people. In this chart, honestly, I don't see that at all. And he would make people laugh until their bellies hurt. He would play pranks, and sometimes pretty juvenile ones. It could be argued that he was a bit of a man-child. So he could also enjoy flirting a lot, and he absolutely loved flirting, and was generally noted to be a warm, empathic person. With Jupiter in the 12th house Scorpio and Scorpio ascendant at 29 degrees, nope, I don't see that. Another thing, from a medical astrology perspective, Jupiter in the 12th house is said to be extremely beneficial for good sleep and overall stable and good health. Now, we all know that it's not the case with the good health, and also something that some people may not be aware of, Elvis suffered from severe insomnia his entire life, so that just doesn't seem right at all. Now, with the official ascendant Sagittarius, we do get a few significant differences. The overall appearance, outward personality, worldview, and disposition becomes a lot lighter with the mutable fire signs ruler Jupiter in the 11th instead of the 12th house. This speaks of someone with a great circle of friends and the capacity to be very popular in his social circle, even in society as a whole. This also changes the relationship with 8th house Pluto, which of course is still a trine, but in the 11th house it makes a lot more sense for him because the 11th house is not only concerned with friends, one's social circle or ideals in life, but also society at large and fans in the case of a performer. This is really important. The 11th house is the house of the fans in the chart of someone who is a public performer. So here we have someone who is very appealing to his fans through his sexual magnetism and charisma, which undoubtedly was extremely deep. We now also get Chiron in the 6th instead of the 7th house, and despite Elvis's lifelong inability to find lasting happiness in love, Chiron is a more logical placement here in the house of health, indicating a nervous disorder, which, together with his mutable fire sign ascendant, makes perfect sense for someone who himself admitted to never being able to sit still for too long. His sense of humor, the warmth in his demeanor, the flirtiness, also the way he, according to his closest friends, saw the world, which was, after all, still very optimistic, this really comes through in this chart. I see someone who is very spiritual, intelligent, curious, and also all-consuming in his interests, but equally quickly bored, not the most willing to commit, flirty, drawn to partners represented by Gemini's traits, quick-witted and attractive. Gemini's female appearance is noted for its decorative quality, but also nurturing partners who are warm-hearted and caring because of Cancer. So all of that really makes sense. What he wanted in a partner was someone who was fun and also would leave him a lot of room to breathe, but who also had a few motherly qualities as well. Also, the placement of Mars in his 10th house instead of the 11th does make more sense to me, because he would have been a negotiator in his career, in this case an artist, with an ability to feel into the needs of his audience, but also to sacrifice his own well-being and compromising a lot for the sake of his career. Mars in Libra can have self-sacrificing tendencies in that it's very important to not fight and to keep the peace, and Mars' aggressive potential becomes more passive and subdued and redirected towards diplomacy in Libra, but often at the expense of one's own position or one's own will. For an artist, of course, Mars in Libra in the 10th house has another dimension, which is being motivated by an artistic talent and temperament in one's own career. From this point of view, Mars in the 10th house also makes a lot more sense than in the 11th. Therefore, I believe the official birth time gives us an accurate chart, which I will examine in more detail. And why exactly Rudyar decided on a Scorpio ascendant remains a mystery to me, to be honest, from a purely astrological standpoint. But I will refrain from speculating whether or not some personal, possibly New Age influenced bias may or may not have been at play. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a comment, and also share this video around, because this really helps me. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.